Well, it's always interesting to talk about a terrorist when usually I get confused by one when I get to the States. But I will try to keep this talk as little depressing as possible, although I will warn beforehand that it does carry some level of distress with it. So for the past few years, I've been engaged in delivering throughout Europe talks around the consequences of technology and how those consequences can completely reshape society as we think about it. So you probably have never heard of this man. This man is called Ted Kaczynski. This guy was a huge entrepreneur in the United States because there was this idea he had that one day humans would be ruled by machines. So because he was a very entrepreneurial guy, he didn't stick around like I do, going around, giving public talks and whatnot. He decided to do something about it. So he started sending bombs to various universities, which earned him the kind nickname of the Unabomber and got him a lot of attention, and he even has his own TV show nowadays. And this guy believed that machines would not take over the world the way we usually see it portrayed in movies, in a Terminator type fashion in which they would kill all humans and whatnot, but rather that we would create a society that would be so complex and so hard to manage with our human brains that we would willingly hand over control of our society to machines. So this got me thinking. First, because although he was a madman, not necessarily everything a madman says is mad. And I decided to work around in creating a model that would allow me to interpret the data that we have available to determine if the guy was right or wrong. So I created a model based on cognitive effort of human activity. And what I mean by this is we have 5 levels, so it's kind of similar to the Maslow pyramid. And these levels are organized by increasing cognitive effort in human activity. So you will find that on level 0, you have 0 cognitive effort. So this is a repetitive work that is performed in the physical world. You can think of agriculture, you can think of industrial, serial industrial production, in which basically you are the entire day repeating the same movements, and once you commit these movements to your muscle memory, then you really don't have to make any decisions. It's just repeating the same movements. So this level of work has been pretty much completely depleted, if you consider in relative terms, since the early 20th century. So with the Industrial Revolution, and you have to remind yourselves that this type of work used to employ 100% of the population, pretty much. If you take away the noblemen and the business owners, pretty much everyone was engaged either in agricultural work or working in an industry doing repetitive labor. So most of it went away, almost 90% with the Industrial Revolution and with the steam engine coming online. And lately, for the past, I would say, 20 years, we have been seeing 2 different technologies taking over. One of them is the general purpose robotics, which is an incredible revolution in itself. Basically, you see that robot over there, looks like 2 arms. The reason why that is disruptive is that the same way that computers needed to go from very specialized machines that were very good at doing one thing and one thing alone into general purpose processing, in which the processors are not that good at doing anything in particular. Lately with GPUs a bit different, but they didn't used to be that good at doing anything in particular. But because they were general purpose, you could build a lot of them. So computing price came down. That was the PC revolution. The same thing is happening now with robotics. We are going from very specific robots that used to be custom-designed arms used in manufacturing and in very specific applications into robots that are not very efficient. I mean, 2 arms, what we have as humans, is not extremely efficient, But now if you can make multi-millions of robots that have exactly the same characteristics, you can bring the price down to a point where it starts becoming efficient. And to put things into perspective, it has become so efficient that Foxconn, which is the hardware maker of the world, let's say, iPhones, most laptops are assembled by Foxconn. They employ 2 million people in China, although they are a Taiwanese company. They have bought 1.2 million of those robots from ABB to replace Chinese workers. Now, when robots become economically viable to replace Chinese workers, you know that something is happening. Another revolution that's coming through is, of course, additive manufacturing. The ability, they like to call it Industry 4.0. I don't know where the 2.0 and 3.0 went. For me, it's still 2.0, which is the additive manufacturing, which will completely reshape supply chains, and it's already doing so, by giving us the ability not only to produce very small series of products, but by allowing us to just transport the raw materials and have assembly done on site, which completely changes the economics of production. So we should expect that most industrial work, the one that's remaining, and even the agricultural work, is soon to be displaced. What happens when humans start being displaced from one level? They go up to the next level. And for a while, a lot of humans were working on level 1. This is cognitive repetitive work. So here, we already have some level of decision-making, some level of intellectual involvement, but it's still repetitive. We are not from that generation, but 70, 80 years ago, you had banks that had rooms completely filled with people that did nothing with their lives other than punching numbers. Because to keep an account balance, you had a room filled with people that were just doing math, just keeping the balances straight. Something that you can now replace an entire room of people with a spreadsheet. And this level has been, again, slowly depleted and has pretty much vanished. So nowadays, you almost don't have any repetitive manual cognitive labor. And you used to have people that copied documents by hand, now you just print 2 of them. So this level has pretty much gone away. Most of the population now works on the next level, the level of managing interactions between chaotic systems and non-chaotic systems. So here I need to pause for a while to explain what I understand for chaotic and non-chaotic systems. A chaotic system is one that presents you with such a variety of potential situations that variety is large enough that can be considered infinite or potentially chaotic. Whereas a non-chaotic one is one where the number of possibilities is highly limited. If you think of what you do when you drive a car, you are actually serving as an interface between the two. You have the world around you, and anything can happen. You can have an UFO land on the middle of the road, and you're supposed to map that reality into a number of operations which are made available by a car, which are finite. I mean, you can steer left, steer right, engage with 3 pedals, and one, well, nowadays not even the gear shift. And with electric cars, not even 3 pedals. So there's a limited number of operations that you need to decide based on an infinite reality what to do with this infinite number of operations. Same thing happens when you have a call center representative. Basically, they're picking up calls from people that can ask them anything. You can have someone calling to Vodafone asking for a pizza, and that person there needs to interpret this and then map this to a finite number of operations that are made available by the internal processes of Vodafone. So it's this interaction between infinite and finite. So this is the level that is currently being attacked, I would say, by what we call the cognitive services of nowadays. They like to call it artificial intelligence. I really cringe with that expression. I think it's even arguable that most of humanity is intelligent. So, but I would call it machine learning, at least. It's displacing a lot of these jobs. We have been seeing, especially with what we call multi-layered cognitive services such as Watson, that have been able to perform better than humans at tasks as complicated as doing Manchester triage in hospitals. And basically, to be fair, the only reason why they're not displacing humans is because we cannot insure them. We still don't have the laws in place. But were we to have the laws in place, we would have first-tier medical practitioners being displaced by computers. Medical imaging, they're gone. It's 2-3 years away. Nowadays, computers can really, really find stuff in medical imaging that will escape even the most trained eye. And this level is most worrying when you consider that even simple tasks, such as driving and piloting stuff, that nowadays account for 11% of all jobs in the world. 11% of people in the world, they live by driving something. A ship, a plane, a car. All of these are now being addressed by self-driving cars, airplanes, and ships. What happens is people start being displaced to the next levels. Next level is level 3. So here you have the interface between chaotic systems and other chaotic systems. This is what we call engineering. The chaotic system that we have as an input are the requirements of the situation we have. The tool set is large enough in its possible combinations that could be considered chaotic. I mean, the number of commands you can issue in a computer are limited, but the number of combinations possible are pretty much infinite. So it's up to a developer to take something that can be extremely varied, which is a set of requirements, and then map this into a sequence of an almost unlimited sequence of commands that perform that requirement. This is the level that currently is not hard under attack, but we're getting there. We call it tools. We have all of these low-code automation tools that are slowly eroding at this level, and the only reason why we haven't been feeling it yet is because the demand has been increasing so fast in this level that actually we're still, short of people. Finally, we have level 4, which is the level of creative work and research. This level has a very interesting characteristic, which is, it depends on some sort of notoriety, especially when we go to creative work. If I am a rock star, which I'm not, definitely, but if I were a rock star, I would depend on a large number of people coming to see me and pay to see my gig for me to be able to earn a living. If we were all rock stars, then no one would be a star and money would just be floating around and no one would be making money. We'd end up with the same level of income. So this level is limited. There's only so many people we can fit here. And so far, we do not have any level above this one. And to be fair, probably a lack of imagination on my part, I cannot envision one at the moment. What this means is there have been some very intelligent people that have crunched the numbers from the World Bank and have come up that on the 3 largest economic blocks in the world, you will find there in black the current unemployment, and you have in white the jobs that are at high risk of being replaced by automation until 2030. That is 11 years from now. You will notice that even in Europe, which is an economic bloc that thrives on intellectual property and on innovation, you still have pretty much 50% of our jobs which are at high risk of automation. And the reason why this is dramatic, other than the fact of imagining half the population employed, is that we do not know any type of government or of society that can sustain itself if you have over 30% unemployment. It's a magical number that you have there. Even in very repressive societies, they completely fall apart once you reach that level. That level means that in an average family, you are going to have at least one person, the family nucleus, you're going to have at least one person unemployed. It means that in your extended family, you're going to have 15, 20 people unemployed for no fault of their own. For no fault of their own. They just can't find a job. So societies, as we have them nowadays, would completely fall apart under a scenario such as this, a scenario that potentially could happen within the next 10 years. Of course, there are solutions, potential solutions that are being tried. One such solution is the introduction of the universal basic income. This principle would state that every citizen, just because they exist, just because you have an ID number, you would be entitled to earn a living, I won't call it wage because you don't work for it, but a living stipend. Something that would allow you to have a basic house, feed yourself, educate yourself, and have basic entertainment. So if you went out and got a job, that would come on top. You would not lose this incentive, which is one of the big differences when compared to other types of social security. You would not lose this incentive if you started working. That would just come on top. So this would allow that the large swaths of the population that would now be unemployed, they could still support themselves. And whoever wanted to go above what is guaranteed by this scheme would then search for a job or try to get a job and earn something on the side. This has been tried already with varying results. In certain situations, it produced amazing results. So there was, as usual, a Gaussian curve to this. You had a small part of the population that just stayed home and waited for the next installment of Game of Thrones. You had the largest amount of the population that basically started working less hours per week. They started converting their jobs into part-times, spending more times in leisure with their families. And you had a small amount, about 16%, that started creating their own businesses and taking on more risks because now they feel that they have a social net that will protect them in case they fail. So one of the big obstacles or one of the big arguments against this system is that it is not sustainable. And I argue against that. Because once you start automating society, if you think of the entire supply chain and you start automating it all, I mean, the raw materials are extracted by robots, they are transported to the industry by robots, the industry is basically composed by robots that repair themselves, that build themselves, then what you start seeing is that the capital investment of producing goods goes way down. Because now you can offset the investment that you make in a robot over millions, billions of individual products or services. So the cost of providing those services starts being just the operational cost, the cost of operating that structure, which will tend to converge towards the cost of energy of operating those machines. Because if you have your robots, that do everything, they even repair themselves, then your cost of operating those robots is really just feeding them with power. So as long as we can, as humanity, create sources of power that are cheap enough, this system should be sustainable long term. But there are other issues that need to be discussed. One of them is social identity. Nowadays, we identify with what we do. In society, people that are unemployed are often kind of outcasts in society. And it's interesting because if you think about how the interaction goes when you meet someone new, first thing you usually ask is their name, and second is what they do. Because we tend to create our own identity, our own self-esteem around what we do. And we don't say, I work as a doctor or I work as a developer. No, we say, I'm a doctor, I'm a developer, I am. And we have a society that is based under this premise that we are what we do. And in a society where you cannot have what would be considered productive labor that produces common goods, we need to create the structures, the social structures that allow people to lead fulfilling lives within these societies. And this is not a problem that is smaller than the one that relates to sustenance, because as we have seen, as we are struggling with identity, we start seeing that cases of depression, of suicide, they're going up. And they're going up because of lack of identification. Of course, there are things that technology itself can help solve. We can augment the capabilities of the human beings that would allow us to become at least relevant for a little bit longer. It would at least postpone our demise. One of the ways we can do that is, and this has been tried with very interesting results so far, is what is called assisted design, in which a human and an AI are working together. The AI is suggesting various permutations that are being selected by a human, so that there's this back and forth between a human and an algorithm in order to produce something. This has been producing amazing results, and actually at the current level of research, this produces better results than either the human or just the algorithm alone. So at this stage, this could be one of the paths that at least for a while would keep us relevant. Another thing that will become, in my opinion, inevitable is that we will start integrating computers with our brains. There has been a bunch of research done on this, mostly with rats. I don't know why, but rats, they always get the cool stuff. They always get the cure for cancer first, and they also get the brain gates first. And already we have rats that are able to communicate between two rats using brain gates. You can teach one rat the way out of a labyrinth, you connect it with the brain gate, and the rat that goes to the same labyrinth without ever having seen it in person is able to navigate it on the first try out. So we already have evidence that we can share memories using brain gates. And eventually, this will be used not only to interconnect humans, but on the first approach, to interconnect us with machines, by allowing us to access the computing power and the memory power that computers have nowadays, which way surpasses our own. At least in calculation, they certainly do. Thing is, and now this is a thought experiment I send to your side. If we have the computers and the robots doing most of the work, so if I have my brain connected to a computer, and the computer feeds me with a stream of information. We already have that in part with this. The computer feeds me with information. I process this information, and then I issue orders based on the information I have, and those orders are then fulfilled by another computer or a robot. And if you doubt that this is already happening, I would tell you that in Europe, we're having all these problems with terrorism. If we were all to receive on our mobile phones a notification saying that there was a terrorist out there, even though none of us had seen that there was a terrorist out there, we'd all panic and react on that. So right now, we are already pretty much dependent, and we kind of believe what machines tell us. We believe the channel. So if we are connected to a machine-based channel that is feeding information to our brain, and we're making decisions based on that are acted on by other machines, haven't we just became a specialized co-processor? Haven't we just became, in the large scheme of things, in this machine, huge machine that we're building, haven't we become a very specialized biological decision-making processor that is taking inputs from machines and just delivering results that machines themselves implement? And in becoming that, wasn't Ted Kaczynski right? Well, I don't know how things are going to progress. Anyone that says they can predict the future is by default wrong. There is one thing I know, is that all religions in the world, they have one thing in common. It's all the religions that have a conception of paradise. In this conception of paradise, nobody works. So there seems to be something in the underlying human psyche that is intrinsic to being a human that says that not working for a living is actually the best thing in the world. So we could be creating a world, potentially, that is veering towards what we as a species perceive as being paradise. Or not. Those decisions have to be made. And the same way that in the past, when the biggest force that was shaping society was war, you had the warrior philosopher. And then later on, when society was shaped by politics and the diplomacy, you had the politician philosopher. We need to take responsibility as technologists and understand that right now the shaping force of society is technology. And we need to take responsibility for the things we are creating and engage actively in these discussions about the societal impact of the things that we are creating. We have the responsibility of becoming techno-philosophers, of going out there and not leave it up to politicians who very little understand about the consequences of the things we are creating. And we need to take responsibility that certain things do not warrant to be created just for the sake of it. There are consequences to that. And engage in those discussions so we can help turn this situation, which is at the moment just a situation, into something that resembles a paradise and not a dystopia. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Is there any question for David? Not throw it here, just too close.
It's here.
Thanks for the speech, David. There's one aspect I want to raise also. Knowledge. Knowledge is power. And so what do you feel is the role of AI in that domain? Will AI be power?
AI, in my opinion, and this is highly controversial, I've had some very interesting discussions around this. In my opinion, the thing you have more comparable to what AI is capable of is nuclear energy. When we first stumbled upon nuclear energy, and let's remember, it happened in a very specific context. It was a war context. But when we stumbled upon it, we realized very quickly that the potential for good and evil, the potential to create a limitless power source or create weapons that would destroy the world, made it important enough that before those problems arose, we had to sit down and have the discussions. And that's why we had the non-proliferation treaties, and we had a bunch of work done in the world to try to contain this technology. Now, nuclear technology had one characteristic that makes it very different from machine learning and AI, is that the technology and the resources required to create a nuclear weapon require usually a state-sponsored entity. It requires the full power of a state, and it's something that's an endeavor big enough that gets noticed. Creating an AI is not the case. It does require a lot of resources, but you can create it under the radar. We do not know, and again, we're not talking about conscious AI. If you just think that a state-sponsored entity could create nowadays an AI that was able to outsmart any human being in the financial markets, keep it completely under wraps, and manipulate the world economy without nobody knowing it, just by doing better decisions. So the potential of this technology for misuse, the potential for especially government entities to gain undue power due to the utilization of this technology is immense, especially to misuse it, again, because it's very easy to keep it below the waterline. So yeah, I think that these types of technologies will convey immense power to the ones that wield them, We are starting to see an arms race, and if you don't see it, you haven't been paying attention. China has invested 7 billion into AI last year. Last year, China was the largest producer of AI research papers in the world. The US took notice. MIT is investing 1 billion into creating an AI-centric department in MIT. So there is an arms race going on, and that arms race is because there is a recognition whoever gets better at this will wield amazing power. And that needs to be discussed now, how we're going to manage that. I do believe personally that in a relatively short time frame, we will have to have something akin to a UN entity that is somehow regulating what is the ethical or non-ethical use of AI. I think it will be inevitable. If it won't be by choice, it will be because we're forced to.
Other questions?
I'm sorry if I depressed you guys, but
I have a small question on my side. You were talking about the basic income.
Mm-hmm.
Isn't there a part in humans that is like taking away the challenge for people to do stuff? And then you have the people that really want to invent stuff, and they're in the top, and that they start their businesses, as you were telling. The people that stop doing anything because they'll get their money anyway. But how do you keep the challenge in doing something alive on a basic income? Well,
that's part of what I tried to raise with that slide when I said about social identity. I think that this transition cannot happen only on the economic front. We will have, as society, we'll have to reshape our own way of identifying our usefulness to society, how we see ourselves producing societal good, and shifting that away from having a 9-to-5 job, if such a thing exists, never knew that, but from having a 9-to-5 job into any type of social work, creative work. But we have to accept that there are going to be a lot of people that are just not going to do anything. And that's just the way it is. We'll have to accept that as being part of what society, what humankind is. And we'll have also to accept that keeping those people happy will also be an important part of creating a society that is happier and more balanced for the ones that are doing something. My perception is that the biggest pain we're going to have is going to be between 20 and 30% unemployment. There it's going to be terrible. And this is where we are going to witness populism coming online, and going to witness a big division in society, in my opinion, because you're going to start witnessing the ones that are still employed, looking at the ones that are not, and thinking, hey, these are just these lazy guys, don't want to do anything. That's not the case. And we see this happening already. In the US, if you look at the statistics, Trump likes to wave the statistics of we're letting our jobs get out of the country. No. Actually, if you look at the industrial production, the industrial output of the US as a country, it has been going up. It's almost tripled. But the people employed by industry have almost halved. And why? Automation. Not jobs. Yes, a lot of jobs went to China, no doubt, and to India. But the biggest culprit of getting people unemployed is already automation. So this is something that we have to accept as society that is coming, and we need to redefine this situation from, hey, this person is not working because they don't want to this person is not working because there's nothing to do. And now, you want to just stay on the beach all day? Your choice. You want to do something else? Your choice as well. What we cannot is cast away the ones that are not doing anything, because a lot of them are not doing anything because there's nothing to do.
Correct. Good. Thanks. Sure there's no other questions? Oh, there's one.
Hi.
Hi.
Thank you for your talk. It was very inspiring.
Thank you.
I was wondering, or thinking about it, but if we would all have a basic income, like we don't have any hunger anymore, and we would get hugely overpopulated.
That wouldn't happen.
That's not going to work, right? I mean, people need to die.
Well, we're not going to be overpopulated. Actually, right now, there are two discourses ongoing, and I really advise reading a book called Factfulness. It's an amazing book written by a guy, I choose not to remember the name right now. What projections show is that whenever you have economic and social development in a country, you start having an aging of the population because people start having less children. And this happens all over the world. Whenever you have a change from right now the world is layered in 4 layers. It used to be like developing world and developed world. Now it's considered 4 levels of economic development. When people grow from level 1, which is extremely poor, it's $1 per day, to $2 per day plus, they start having less children because they want to invest in their child's education. They want to invest in the few children they have. There's not so many children dying, so they can risk betting everything in 1 or 2 children. And what we see is that the population growth trend has been slowing very, very fast, and what is estimated is that we'll peak the world population at 10 billion, about around 2050. And that from there on, the population will start decreasing. So there is literally almost no projection that shows otherwise. So population will stagnate at 10 billion, around that. We will have to find ways to make sure that our world is sustainable with 10 billion people living in it, which in my opinion, if you now consider that most of the production is being completely automated, we don't have a lack of food right now. I mean, we could feed the world, We have a huge problem of resource distribution. We have a huge problem of resource allocation. Once everything is pretty much automated, that becomes a moot point. The only point that will not become moot, in my opinion, is energy. If we are not able, on the contrary, of creating a very cheap, very, very cheap, sustainable energy source, we're doomed. Because all of the good side of this is only possible if energy prices go way down. And the only way they can go way down, if we consider the externalities, which is if we account in the price of energy to every societal and environmental impact, the only way it can go down is that we become really sustainable, really good at creating sustainable energy. So I don't believe that will be an issue. What you're stating, that overpopulation or not having a sustainable system will not be an issue as long as we can have cheap, sustainable energy. And if you want my take on that, just because I like poking people, in my opinion, we cannot not get there without nuclear energy. It's a discussion that we need to have in Europe pretty fast. We're still stuck with this idea that we can create an energy system without what is called baseload energy. We cannot, at least not with current technology and without anything that we envision in the next 10 years. So we always need to have something that is 100% guaranteed for baseload. And right now, our choices there are pretty much gas, oil, or nuclear. Gas and oil, you think about global warming, I won't even go there. Because burning of coal and oil releases more radiation. Yes, coal is radioactive and also is oil. Release more radiation than nuclear power plants. The extraction of coal, oil, and gas kill way more people in 1 year than the nuclear power production ever did in its entire history. So I think we are going to have to go there. And one of the main things we need to do that pretty fast is something completely counterintuitive, which we need to close down as fast as possible every single nuclear reactor we have. And the reason for that is 90% of nuclear reactors we have nowadays, it's 1960s tech. 1960s tech. It's first generation nuclear. We are now on fourth generation nuclear. We have nuclear reactors that are impossible to melt down, that are impossible to have accidents like we had in Fukushima. So we're not just not using them because everyone is so afraid of nuclear power, no one lets new generators be built, and the power companies are so afraid of losing the ones they have, they keep refurbishing first generation ones. So we're stuck with this situation. I would like to know how many would be willing to drive at 70 miles per hour in a 1960s car. I mean, most of you wouldn't. I wouldn't. But in a 2019 car, 70 miles per hour, that's nothing. The safety systems, everything, the security, everything is different. So why are we stuck with that technology? Well, because we're just afraid to face that technology had problems. We solved most of them, and we need to move forward, and we need nuclear in our energy mix. Sorry, this is my rant. This is my pet peeve. Sorry.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I hope you've created a lot of techno-philosophers today. I would like to thank you very much for your talk.
Well,
so
thank
big hand
you.
applause.
Feel free to contact me on. Feel free to contact me on any of these issues. I'd be more than happy to have conversations around these topics.
Thanks.
Thank you.